Hello everyone and welcome to a new video. Today's video is going to be all about my first year project at uni as an interior design student. I thought I would share with you the 3 projects that I did during first year, and if you guys like this video then I will also do a video on my second year work and on my third year work. But before we get into that, I just thought I would give a brief overview of how the course was designed. So basically we had 4 modules. The first one being kind of the main module where you would do all the design work. The second module was called Visual Professional Practice, and that module would support the design module very heavily. So it was all about learning how to draw, especially in first year. And it was basically just a module about how to visually present and show interior design work. Then the third module was called Toolkit, which was all about how to do technical drawings. In first year, that meant learning a lot of technical drawing conventions. It was also about learning all the standard sizes for things. And then later on, it became also about regulations. And then for the last module, that was just called Critical Context, and that was basically just the supporting essay each year. Also, we learned a lot of design history, which was really interesting. So that was the structure of the course. All of these modules we would have around 3 hours. There was around 12 hours of contact time, and in all the other hours you would have to work on things by yourself in your own time. And that is pretty much it on how the structure of the course itself worked. I will now get into my work and show you my very first project that I ever did at uni. So basically we had to create a model out of cardboard, which I actually don't have anymore because it was way too big. So I will try and see if I can find a picture. But even without the model itself, this project will make sense. It was a very basic project and I'm actually not very proud of this project, but I will show it anyway. And I think it really shows how far you can come. It was a steep learning curve for me for sure. So this is what a technical drawing is. This is just done with very thin lines, and what we normally do first is just draw everything out in pencil, and then we put this tracing paper over it in order to draw very neat outlines. And then what I did with this is I used a printer just to print it on a normal page, and then I would use markers to shade everything. So this is just a front elevation of everything shaded, and then I will quickly flick through all the other drawings I did for this project as well. We just had to create 3 boxes, connect them somehow, and add interesting light effects into it. So for example, for this box here, I cut a bunch of holes in the top. We would then shine a torch at the top and look through this hole here, and we would see how everything created shadow. And this project was basically there to learn how lighting affects things and to learn spatial awareness, and also how to create an architectural model. This was just a very basic project to wean ourselves into the course. So then this is a section which is just a cut through the entire model. Again, so I created some cardboard shapes in here to create a little bit of interest. And this drawing is actually 2 scales, so we did also learn how to do a scale drawing. We also had to hand in a little bit of a film for this project. So if I can find that, I will blend it in as well, because I think it will make a little bit more sense when you actually see it. I will now quickly show you the final presentation that I did for this, and actually looking at this is quite embarrassing. First, you will always start with ideas and development and sketches essentially. So I included some of my sketches and ideas of what I wanted to do with this space. It was important to create shadows. This was just kind of my thinking behind how I could do that. And here you can actually see pictures of the models that I created so that we could see how the light cast all the shadows inside the model itself. So that was the first part of the presentation. Then these are some internal shots. I split this into box 1, 2 and 3. And for the first box I created a bit of a skylight, and this was the light that it cast inside the box. Then this is what the second box looked like, and you can clearly see the shapes that I showed you in my technical drawings earlier. This is a picture of the second box. Then I created some stairs to lead up to the third box, and this is the third box, and this is what the third box actually looked like inside. I added yellow tissue paper to create that yellow light. So for this project we had to kind of create 3 parts of emotion. So I think I went from sadness to happiness in the end. That was just to give this project a little bit more depth, but I don't want to actually dwell on this project itself way too much, just because it's very basic and it was just there to teach us some basic skills. So for this next bit, I thought I would focus on showing you what I did in the module Visual Professional Practice, which, just to remind you, in first year was focused on teaching you how to draw properly. So this drawing I did to learn some shading. For architectural drawings, a lot of the time you will have to use a specific type of font. So we learned the font that we would be using. So we had to just practice that a couple of times. Just going to flick through some of these. This was the first drawing I did, where I did a front elevation, a side elevation, a plan view and a section. And this was just of a cabinet that we had in our studio. Then here is where we learned some shading. For this exercise we would create progressively darker shading. This was a drawing where I just went over a photograph. I think this was the first drawing I did where I used markers and rendered everything out. So that was to learn how to render out a scene. And then here we had to just do some detailed drawings of some textures. And then this drawing here was my first site plan. I based this off of Google Maps. We also took another sheet of tracing so that we could put it over and indicate where the wind came from, where the rain came from, where the sun comes from. Then we did some exercises of drawing up sections of the studio. And then this is your sheet of tracing paper showing artificial light from the light sources in the studio, then the natural light from the window. For this exercise, we just had to draw everyday objects and create the right shading for them. So this is a sketch for 1 point perspective I did, and I did a way more detailed video on this, which I will link below. You can kind of see this is very sketchy, and then I went over it and cleaned everything up, but I will get to this a bit later. But that was the entire module for that year. So the second project that we did in first year was actually a lot more interior design focused than the first project. This project was to design a small space for students. It had a lower level and a mezzanine level, and they gave us a basic plan with dimensions, and then we could do anything we really wanted in there. The only other thing that made this project a little bit more interesting was to design this around our favorite holiday destination, which I find such a creative brief. So I chose Finland. And you'll later on see I kind of kept things in like green tones to make it feel a bit like the Finnish environment. So that was basically the brief. I actually don't have all that much left from the development that I did for this project. So we created a mood board and a concept board for the first time, which was really, really fun. And for the mood board, I put loads of images of Finland on there. At the beginning, we actually just got a blank section, and then I drew over that section just with some thin lines. I will share with you the second sketch that I have, which I think is quite interesting because I drew this armchair completely wrong. This is more of a perspective view, but it is meant to be a flat on section. So you can see that I still had a bit of learning to do. Now moving on to the final presentation that I did for this project, which actually already looks a lot better than the first one. We were asked to mount things from the back. This is the plan view. So the way I created this is by creating all the items individually, and then I would kind of shift them around in the space so that I would know where I wanted everything to sit. So this is the final presentation. This is a rendered plan view, and then this is the plan view of the mezzanine. One thing I can spot immediately is that I didn't annotate what this is, and this was the second page of my presentation that I did for this project. Here I have actually included some descriptions, but again they are not the same. This one is printed and this one is just written on. So then this is section BB, which on this plan I indicated section B is looking that way, but here you can see the inspiration from Finland, a lot of wood, a lot of green from Finnish forests. Up here is the mezzanine, so that is section B. And then section C is here, which shows a lot of the mezzanine, and then it shows the entire kitchen. And then these are the last sections, which is section A and section E, so they're not actually kind of in the right order. For this image here, I actually used a mounting technique, so I didn't want to draw it and I wanted to try something a bit different. So I actually cut it out and kind of stuck it to the back, and you can see how I mounted everything as well. I think you could have done it a little bit neater. This was kind of the last thing I did when I had my deadline, and I remember when I was working on this project, I think all the projects in first year, I would kind of rush the deadline and I would work till like 2 at night to just get it finished. So this was probably something I did at 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock at night. And then this is the last section where you can see a bit more of the bathroom and the stairs going up the mezzanine. And then we also had to do a 1-point perspective. As I showed you earlier, that was the draft of the perspective that I did, and then I just drew over that in pen, and this was the final version of it. This sketch turned exactly into that. So that was all of the second project in first year. I will show you the third and final project that I was working on in first year now. And this one is a lot more comprehensive. It actually had 2 parts to it, which I will share with you. I think for this project I have pretty much kept everything, so I can show it to you from start to finish. So this project was our first residential project, and we had this project with a live client. It was someone that our lecturer knew, and they wanted a new kitchen. So we all actually went there in order to measure everything out. This was just about giving them a new proposal and actually doing a project from start to finish with a live client, which was definitely a step up from the last project that we did. Before we started this project, they gave us some insights on how to actually plan out a kitchen. You always need to have a triangle between the sink, the fridge, and the stove. They need to work in correlation with one another. So the way this project worked was, as I already said, we went there in person, chatted through it with the client, and then took all the measurements that we needed. And after taking all the measurements, we would draw the existing plan. And then after that, I drew a plan of what they wanted it to be like. So the proposed floor plan. And as you can see, they wanted to extend this side and get rid of this entire wall here. This actually looks very final, but I will now share with you how I got here. So the first stages were to actually go over the outlines of the plan and just plan in where I thought things could go. And I came up with several options, so having the dining table here or having it further down. After playing around with where things needed to go, there were some options that I preferred to others, and then I would explore those options a little bit more and neaten them up. And what I did for that was I actually drew up all the furniture that I wanted in there, and then I could just rearrange things freely on an empty floor plan. So I could put the island unit here or there or wherever I wanted. When I had placed things, then I would just photocopy it. Then it would give me a floor plan like this, and then I would show that to my tutor in the next lesson, and they would just do a bunch of notes around it of what I could change. And that was basically the development for a couple of weeks. So then after going back and forth with my tutor, we actually landed on a floor plan that we both liked. I drew some existing sections of the space, and these are all to scale as well. And then I drew some final sections. Everything I'm showing you, I drew with pencil on tracing paper first, and then I have gone over it with a felt tip. And here is a perspective that I drew. And obviously the first time you're drawing it, it's not going to be perfect. So it does definitely help to do it in pencil first. So that's the perspective. I will now go on to share with you what the final presentation looks like and how all of these drawings came together. This is the final plan that I rendered out, and I also did a little bit of a description. Then this is the lighting plan. This was the second page of my presentation, which is some rendered final sections, and then the final perspective. I nearly forgot to share with you the sample board that I did for this project as well. For this project, I actually chose specific materials. I chose handles for the kitchen. I ordered some free samples and collated them all on a sample board. I also annotated everything that's on the board, so I gave everything a number and then said what it is. And these are some color samples for the cabinets and the walls, and yeah, I'm really happy with this. That was basically this entire project, but there was a whole other side to it that we presented alongside with it, which I will share in a second. I first want to share some more technical drawings that I did for this project. The whole toolkit module that I talked about in the beginning became a lot more important with this project, and then in second and third year it would become even more important. This was actually our introduction to really technical drawings. So this is a reflective ceiling and lighting plan, and then this is an electrical and furniture plan. I have also included some codes so that you can see where I sourced the items from. And then I also had to do a floor and wall finishes drawing, which just indicates the floor finish. And then on here, I have specified what the wall finish is. I've put exactly the specifications and the supplier that it's from. And then I also did a technical drawing of the section, which is very, very detailed. And the nice thing, as you can see here, from doing it all on tracing paper and then photocopying it, is that if you've done something wrong, you can just add like a piece of paper, stick it on there, and then when you actually print it out, you won't see that mistake. I will now share with you the specification document that we did, and this again was the first time of us doing a specification document, so it's not as detailed as it will be later on, but it was a really great introduction. We detailed everything new that was going into this project, so for example the microwave, the sink, things like that, and the quantity and the dimensions. And that was actually all there was to my specification document, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, these were just some notes I did for myself. So then the last thing I want to share with you is another part of this project, which was to focus on one furniture item that we then would design in a lot more detail. So I actually focused on the kitchen island unit that had an integrated hob. This is the presentation I did for it. So the first view that you can see here is the axonometric view. And then I also did a top view, a front view and a back view. And then I did a side view and a section view. And that was pretty much it for the presentation for that. But I also had to do technical drawings for this as well. As you can see here, the technical drawings went into a lot more detail. I also annotated things in the font that I showed you earlier. We really had to do a lot of research into how a cabinet is built. They basically just wanted us to show that we knew what a cabinet is made out of, just so that someone could take these drawings and construct the actual unit with it. And then there's this technical drawing I did for it, which is just the plan view and the top view. This was pretty much everything we did in first year. I will make another video on everything we did in second year, which was actually a lot more, and then I will also make a video on third year. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you very soon with another video. Goodbye.